would you do the fashion show? And I was like, fashion? I don't give a shit about that. Like I'm a musician. And she was like, well, it's $500. I was like, I'm in. I'm in.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is an internationally acclaimed music and lifestyle branding expert, creative director, and visionary. He's a respected music branding specialist with a distinguished track record in the luxury space. He's worked with iconic brands, including Virgin Voyages and W Hotels. He's the founder of his own creative and strategy agency, L'Acqua Agenzia. He's the global entertainment director at Starwood Hotels and Resorts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michaelangelo L'Acqua.
How are you, my friend? Thank you for having me.
I'm great. And the last time I saw you in person was it over Christmas?
Yes.
About New Year's? And you didn't jump in the water, but all of us jumped in the water and swam with these giant whale sharks. But I guess you'd been there, done that, having
No, I saw Jaws in the 70s and it's forever, broken me. And I only like to go in the water if I can see the bottom in my feet. So I really enjoyed watching you guys swim. It was beautiful.
It was pretty cool. You jump in, you start swimming your ass off. I didn't know how fast they swim. And then I turned and looked, and there was this giant whale shark there, but they're not like Jaws. They have like gums. They'll gum you to death.
Very docile, but it's what you don't see that scares me.
You did give very good moral support. And then you were lovely enough to invite us all over to your home, which was just incredible to see. And just, there's such an awesome collection of entrepreneurs, creatives, visionaries, in the Todos Santos area where you are. And I think that that's actually a great segue into hospitality and what it means to you.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the home that y'all have created there, and then all of your friends, and then the vision of where everything is going, it's really remarkable. And thank you for letting me have embraced it and lived it and breathed it and seen it. So I appreciate you. Thanks, man. How does that make you think about hospitality?
Hospitality is everything to me, experiences, sensorium, the magic of moments of awe, and how the actual art of hospitality comes in contact with experiences, comes in contact with the dream state. So it's been quite a journey as we've watched a massive transition from COVID time to where we are now. Our younger generation has come online and how powerful they are with their new consumption. And also hitting a certain age myself where, luxury is more defined by the way I live my life than it does the way, let's say, my mother and my father at one time lived their lives. So I feel it's a great time to be in hospitality and luxury hospitality in particular.
So one thing I was struck in spending that time with you over the holidays was I hadn't thought about this movie in a really long time. It's a documentary. It's called It Might Get Loud. And it has, I forgot who the filmmaker was, but I remember there was Jimmy Page, Jack White, almost Jack Black, and The Edge, right? Three very different guitarists, in my opinion, right? Totally different. I don't even know how they all got in the same place. But when they were talking about, actually, when Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin was talking about The Edge, almost in reverence, I was surprised that he loved The Edge so much, but he referred to The Edge as a sonic architect. And actually, that's really what I got from you. You are a sonic architect. And I hadn't thought about that until I spent that time with you. And then on the flight home, I was like, oh my God, he's a sonic architect. I don't know if that word you feel describes you very well, but I was very struck by the power of it and kind of how sound is almost like a timestamp, like scent in a way, to tie all of the other senses together. And I just
Yeah,
love to hear your thoughts on it.
sure. I mean, let's talk about Jimmy Page first. An absolute incredible technician with skills that, are probably the best guitar player in the world, top five. The Edge, on the other hand, technically does not have the same facility, but what he did do was he's a master of motif and melody, right? And I think when you look at telling stories, you craft a melody and then you create a motif that changes ever so slightly as the film plays out. So this is how I look at hospitality. You're looking at it 7 days a week. You're looking at it from the morning, the afternoon, the evening, and the late night. And at any given moment, you can create magic for the guest. So it's really important when you're defining a particular brand sonic identity and their strategy to play with motifs, right? So that the guest at any given time can experience the melody one way. And we're not diverting very far to another melody. We're just tweaking the melody and the energy behind it. So being a sonic sculptor, yeah, I think that plays in. I take that as a tremendous compliment.
Additionally, when we were all there, we were there on vacation. You're living there, you're working there, you're doing
Yeah.
everything. And I remember at one point you had to get a deliverable done. I don't remember when it was. It was like, it might have been New Year's Eve.
Yeah, it was New Year's, Christmas. It was
It was one
hell.
of those days, and you were like so dialed in and focused and getting it. And I forget what you called your deliverable, but it was like a sonic brand book or a
Yeah, Sonic Identity Brand Bible.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's pretend a sonic identity brand Bible. I fucking love that. Okay. So let's pretend I have a place that purveys hospitality. And I
Yeah.
love what you said, from morning until night, because so many places, okay, they do breakfast well, they do dinner well, they do
Yeah.
lunch well, but it doesn't really, or they have after hours really well, but it's really hard to get it all to tie together just in the fit and finish of the place, the lighting, I'm sure the sound. But how does that deliverable, that brand Bible for you, tie all of that together? How can you help smooth out those rough edges of a space through sound?
When I was younger, I used to be the cool guy that would come in and tell you, what to do in cool ways, right? As I'm older and slower now, I realize that sound and experiences are infrastructure. So before we do anything, before we hire a vendor, before we curate, before we create an experience, we need to clearly define what is your strategy. How do you take the touch points of the brand DNA and you translate them into very clear objectives? In the same way that a design brand Bible is created, we do the exact same thing with sound, with music, with experiences, and it's clearly mapped out across all of your hotels and all of your spaces, all of your hospitality properties and restaurants and beach clubs. And then once the executive team has clarity on that and they feel very strong and passionate about the direction because it's right in front of them, then they can sign off on it. And then we can put a budget against it. And then we can start executing on developing everything. And that even comes down to setting up new RFPs for different vendors that can be more in line with the vision of what we're trying to create. So the Sonic Brand Bible for me is something that I came up with when I worked for Richard Branson, Virgin Voyages. We built that brand from scratch, and there were, I think, 45 outlets, and we really needed to understand the architecture of experiences, of sound, and how you would take the guest through a 7-day or a 5-day emotional arc, because you have them captive for 24/7. So, yeah, the Sonic Brand Bible is something that I like to start with my clients on, and then from there we get to start having fun.
So this has been coming up more recently with many of the podcasts that I've been having in these conversations on just the idea of branding and having a branding specialist. Oftentimes I find that the branding agency that will really help all the stakeholders in the project clearly define the vision and where they want to go. They help define that North Star. It
Mhm.
really helps everything else fall into place.
Yeah.
What I found is, after reading some of the deliverables, okay, sound
is a part of it, but it's often a small part of it. So, but it is important, right?
Yeah.
And you're coming at it as a branding specialist from the sonic perspective, right? So you would probably lead with the sound and everything else follows
Yeah, let
suit.
me put it into perspective. If a brand doesn't have clarity and they haven't really defined their point of view within sound or their infrastructure to deliver sound, how am I able to make your guests stay that extra hour to have one more cocktail to keep
Mm,
on that conversation going? If they have just one more cocktail that they normally wouldn't have, how much does that hit your bottom line? Period. Right?
mm,
So if you're a brand and you take this, you can get KPIs against that. You can see how long they sit in it. Bad music, bad culture. People are in and out. It's transactional. But in luxury hospitality, you want people to embrace the food, the beverage, the design, um, the architecture, the whole bit. But the real cream on top of it that allows you to manipulate a guest consciously and unconsciously is sound and
mm.
music.
And this was the second part of where I wanted to go in that question. But you said yourself, you started off, you didn't say tastemaker, but I'm putting that on you as a young, cool tastemaker, right? You're out, you're DJing, you had a recording studio, you've done everything in the world of creating sound and
Yeah.
experience through sound. At what point on your journey did you, and how did you figure out this sonic branding Bible? And
Yeah.
because oftentimes I envision you working with musicians and other artists who are up really, really late, working the midnight oil, getting that done. But you must have also been walking around in like this, because you're working so hard, in this state of like, I don't know, just delirium, right? Because you're tired, or maybe you're getting it. I know I'm speaking for me. I would just be so tired if I was up all night. I'm not a vampire, then perhaps you are.
We woke up late.
But how did you come up with the idea of getting this really incredible deliverable together? And what were some of the, I don't know, the mentors or experiences to where you could develop this Bible?
I'm very fortunate to be born at the right place at the right time within the major moments, cultural moments within humanity and analog humanity, more importantly,
Mm,
prior to Instagram, prior to any type of digital footprint that we had. In the 90s, I was a studio musician and a record producer. And just, and I don't mean to disrespect any musicians, but I was ignorant to anything outside of my guitar, right? That's all I really cared about. I had a very lucky experience. I had a mentor named Bernard Purdy. He's one of the most recorded drummers in the history of music. He heard me come into class because I went to the new school and I got a degree from jazz in jazz from there. And he told me that I would never make it as a guitar player. I sucked, but I could write music. And he heard some of my compositions. So
okay, well, wait, hold on. What was your
yeah,
response as soon as he said that to you?
again, different time, a
Did you
different
tell him that?
time.
Did you give him a piece of your mind, or you just took it?
No, this is the most recorded drummer in the history of music. You sit
Okay,
there and you take it like a man.
okay.
And he told me this over and over and over. So back then,
So you were desensitized.
no one was a snowflake back then. So it wasn't desensitized. And the intention of a mentor like that, and back in the analog days, was to destroy you in all shape or form that you thought you were. And then a real mentor would rebuild you into the shape of what they believed were your best qualities. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to do that right now because there's triggers and all these other things. And people don't, in my opinion, on a creative space, don't often break through their ego to achieve the greatest successes that they could had they been destroyed and rebuilt, through a hard experience. So by that, I gave up the guitar. I started writing and producing music. And randomly, I got discovered by Tom Ford and his team. I had done a small fashion show in New York for a up and coming designer named Cynthia Raleigh at the time. A friend of mine called me up, said, "Hey, our music person quit. Would you do the fashion show?" And I was like, "Fashion? I don't give a shit about that. Like I'm a musician." And she was like, "Well, it's $500." I was like, I'm in. I'm in. $500 in 1999 was a lot of money, for a starving musician. So I did the show. It hit really big during New York Fashion Week. And then I got a call from the producer of Tom Ford for Gucci and Saint Laurent and said, "Hey, I have a client. Would you be interested in doing a demo for him?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure."
And did you know who Tom Ford was?
No,
at
they
that
didn't
point?
tell me anything.
Oh,
They just
okay.
told me,
But if
"Hey."
they were
I
to have said that, would you have known?
This is where the story gets good.
Oh, okay.
So
good. Shut the fuck up, Dad, and let me go.
I said, "Yeah, sure." And they said, "Okay, we only have $2,500 for the demo." And I was like, "What the fuck? Like 25, that's insane." It's like someone throwing me $250,000 right now. So they wanted me to produce remix Marlena Dietrich, "Falling in Love Again," over like 3 different ways. They gave me a week to do it. I stayed up all night. I smoked a lot of pot and I produced 3 remixes and I handed it in the next day. They yelled at me, said, "We gave you a week. Why would you hand it in next day?" And I said, "This isn't as good as it's going to get." And then a couple of days later, I get a call saying that the client wants to meet you. And I said, "Sure, I'm available, anytime this week." I was bartending and playing gigs. They said, "No, in Paris." And I was like, "What?" So I got flown business class to Paris with my roommate at the time, who I asked to jump in with me because I was so ignorant and music guy. I didn't even know what an invoice was. Was told while we were driving down, George Sank, "You're about to meet Tom Ford." And I turned to my business partner at the time. I said, "How is Ford Motors related to fashion?"
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, and the producer thought I was joking and yelled at me, and "This is not a joking matter." Anyway, I got hired by Tom Ford because Gucci had just bought Saint Laurent, and I was producing the first Saint Laurent show under Tom Ford. So this was like an insane moment within fashion. Like Saint Laurent was stepping down. He was a god, and Tom Ford, this marketing genius who wasn't a sketcher, like Saint Laurent, was coming over, and it was almost like the Antichrist was taking over fashion per se. And it hit so hard. The show was incredible. The Gucci show was incredible in Milan, and from that moment onward, I had to learn very quickly and very painfully how to translate emotion, memories, abstract thoughts into a sonic show that delivered a vision of fashion for all these designers. So whether it was Diane von Furstenberg, Karl Lagerfeld, or Tommy Hilfiger, I worked with them all, and they're not easy. They're always like, this show is all about being black and hard shapes, but soft and round and light. And you're just like, what are you talking about? So they show you the fabric, you touch the fabric, they tell you the inspiration, what it was. And this was while I started scoring film and TV commercials. So all of a sudden I started coming up with this understanding that life is nothing more than a film, right? And that when I'm producing these fashion shows, this is a score to a film that's unraveling, and the main characters are these models wearing the different clothes, and these are the different characters. So that is the only way, or the only reason why I am what I am, is because of my days in fashion, where conceptually it was telling a story through subtext and context, just like you would when you're scoring a film. When you're looking at Ennio Morricone, you know what I mean? The melodies behind it drive the character when they're not saying anything, and vice versa. When the character's saying something, they're supporting the emotional intent by the two characters on film. So I took all of that knowledge and I started implementing it into hotels. Once W Hotel called me up in 2009 and asked me to be music director. And at that point I was like, oh, like I had a formula in my head. I had applied it at a very, very high level. So adding curation music, adding cultural moments, like why is this subgenre of music so cool? Again, pre-analog, right? Like I was the guy that had the white labels. I was the guy in the club in Paris getting, ground level cool. And then I was able to take that, distill it down to the values that I thought a brand could really, really excel in, and then drop it in. And that's what I did with W Hotels. I was able to really take the inner sanctums of the cool spots that I existed in, DJ'd in, and then translated to a soundtrack that represented the lifestyle of W Hotels. So long-winded conversation, but I shouldn't exist.
Well, yeah, okay. So, and I want to get to that because growing up in that age of analog helped you because there was a certain amount of kismet or luck. Just look, we all work really, really hard. And I love the one saying that the harder I work, the luckier I get. So I don't want to
Yeah,
like take that away from you. But I feel like if this was today, you might not have been found because you might not have had the most likes or the most followers or
totally,
the most whatever. You
totally.
just happen to be,
Born at the right place.
yeah, but you also put yourself there. You put yourself there, right?
I mean, look, when it happened to me in 1999, what, there were like 2 billion less people on the planet, probably 27 years ago. I lived in New York City and in the epicenter of culture and cool. And I was grinding as hard as I could to achieve something. And again, when I say grinding, like a different way, like you did not get on stage unless you were the baddest motherfucker in the room,
Yeah.
period. Nowadays, everybody gets a, participation trophy. He's got 100 hours into doing something and you have a platform to say what you want. You get to DJ after like 50 hours of practicing. Like it wasn't like that back then. You had to be the baddest motherfucker. And that meant, you were pushing 10,000 hours by the time you got an opportunity. Once you hit 10,000 hours, you're a master. You're hitting degrees of mastery. And then if you're lucky enough to have mentors that have 30,000, they shit on you and they tell you ain't shit at 10,000 hours. So you work harder and you work harder. So I'd say if I existed now, probably not. I'd probably not have this opportunity. But again, right place, right time, right, right work ethic and skill sets that I acquired. And then, you step up. And I was like, all right. And I threw everything I had at it.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info.
Okay. So what's interesting though is as we become more wise, aka older and grayer and silvered, one of the things that I think is amazing, and you referred to it earlier, where okay, you were in the right place, you got torn down by your mentor, and that might not have happened today, also because of people getting triggered and just people changed, right? How people interact
Yeah.
with the world changes. But how do you think? I don't know, like the path that you're on, you're still coming up with new stuff. You're dealing with so many different types of people, from teetotalers to gender fluid folks
Yeah.
to like kids that just have mom and dad's credit card and they just want to like get bottle service and party all night. But you have to, the demographic has changed, right? So like how have you learned to just keep delivering for that from breakfast to late
Yeah.
night?
I mean, one, I like to stay in my sweet spot. I understand luxury and I understand the luxury consumer and I understand the trends of this new generation that's inheriting, $1.7 trillion. More importantly, I understand analog and I understand how to create real life experiences that are rich and rewarding for people to spend time in a space together and commune, right? These are formulas that I think are just baseline for humans. With my pedigree in luxury and being, mentored by incredibly talented beyond my imagination and comprehension most of the time, fashion producers, right? Like next level of stuff I just didn't understand until like years later when I started getting into luxury. And then I'm like, oh my God, now I understand what Tom said or what Ralph said, or blah, blah, blah. So again, I stay in my sweet spot. I don't try to assume I understand a younger demographic that's not in the luxury space. That's out of my context. So
It's like you almost have to stay plugged in, and you're like an anthropologist, always
yes,
studying.
I'm an anthropologist, but I also, humans don't change that much, right? And I think our generation, you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, they were so rich with culture, and we invented so much cool shit. To be honest with you, sometimes I just pull out, a bag of tricks where what were ultimately stuff I've either done or other people have done in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. Most of the people don't or haven't been there, don't know it, or don't remember it. So I just take those formulas and I put the relevant twists that are need to be done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel when you're a master. You just have to look back in the coffers and understand how you applied that when this was trending or that. You just change the colors, but the structure and the human to human engagement doesn't change. I also, I like to stay in luxury because people do like to party, and we're not. It's the teetotaler is secondary, and we'll have one cocktail on the menu for them. Great, have fun. But we want to drive food and beverage, or we want to drive alcohol consumption, and we want people to have that old school analog style. We're not looking to you know, shit on people that don't believe in that, but they still want the experience. They still want fun in the room, and they still want a great time. So play the hits, stay in your sweet spot. And also luxury is changing a lot right now because of this younger generation. And the more that I can tee up those formulas that have been proven decade after decade after decade, why would that younger person not embrace it? It works every time.
Agreed. I don't know. I guess you have a lot more experience than I do. I would have to pull out my old like CD case with all the things in there and try, but you probably have a much smoother and your ability to connect with the zeitgeist at any moment is probably orders of magnitude above anything I could ever.
Let me put it in context. If the Barcelona chair was forgotten and no one knew about it, and you came out with it today, do you think people would be like, that sucks? Or would they be like, holy shit,
No, they would because
it's a cool fucking chair.
Yeah, it taps into just that core basic human ergonomic thing, and that need and look and
It's
feel
just
and everything.
form and structure and art all combined, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, why I'm relevant still, and I'm still shocked. I always feel like I'm going to be irrelevant at any given moment, is because I've lived decades of trying to do this. So I'm constantly studying what was done. How can I do it better? Tweaking the formula. And now I truly believe that there are moments I can really tap into unconscious feelings within somebody. And if I can do that, then I got you. I got you. And you're going to walk away from that experience and say, that was a great night. I don't know why, but it was special, and it wasn't trending, and it wasn't the cool shit that came out last week. It was a formula that resonated unconsciously, and you felt it. And then you and I are talking in the room, and we felt our energy escalate. And then we left and we're like, that was a great night. You got me high, I got you high, and the experience got us high. So that's what I'm constantly trying to strive. And then obviously design and then hospitality has to be at that level, because, when the server comes over and they know exactly what to say, or they already have that drink in their hand before you've even said, can I get another one? And their personality shines. That's what we call hospitality magic in the moment of awe, where it all comes together and it just perfectly flows. So I'm very lucky to work at Starwood, where everybody's insane. Everybody's trying to be the best that they can be, and everybody's pushing each other to work in concert to create that perfect formula. And it feels like being in the Marines sometimes. And I really like that because it brings me back to like the old days where nothing mattered except excellence.
So much in the same way that the demographic of the guest or the patrons has changed
Yeah.
over the past 15 or 20 years, how have the how have what brands are asking you for today, how has that changed over the past 10 years
Um,
or 15 years?
yeah, I think as of lately, a lot of the strategy component of it is what they're coming to me for. I'm not out till 4 or 5 in the morning like I used to be every night, picking up the micro cultural little seeds, and then bringing them into something. I'm stepping back and looking at massive trends and then saying, how do I create the infrastructure so that when I do hire the music director here, or we are hiring a bunch of resident DJs within a particular genre of music that trends in, let's say, Ibiza this summer or somewhere else, you have ultimate control over all the dynamic pieces across your portfolio. And that's looking at sound and experience through infrastructure. Like I said, like a visual brand Bible or a design schematic on how you're going to build a space. It's the strategy that allows a brand. So if I'm gone, if I do this and then I leave, you have a legacy document. If the CEO leaves, you have a legacy document. If the VP of the company comes in, you have a legacy document. You know exactly where it is. And then you can update it accordingly, right? But you have like a brand DNA component in sound for your brand. That gives you a roadmap and strategy to always apply. And then you're just tweaking the formula with maybe different trends. But you need core values. Core values should never change. The trends are just little sprinkles on top of the sundae.
I agree. And the values are the ones that are the hardest to get right and take the longest, in my opinion. But when they're
Yeah,
right and you attract the right people to work there, you're all
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about it, it makes it so much easier to execute on what that vision is. And then I want to go back to um the Richard Branson and his team for the Virgin
yeah,
deliverable that you did. So the first deliverable in like when you kind of went parabolic was staying up for a couple days, getting that deck or getting, I don't know what it would be, getting the deck together for Tom Ford. Is
Oh
it a
no,
deck,
I was
a track?
remixing. I was actually producing. Yeah, I was remixing
Okay, so you got a
music. Yeah,
track
yeah,
or tracks. I don't
yeah,
know. You said you got 3 tracks for Tom Ford
yeah,
and you did that deliverable and it changed the course of your life, right?
yeah,
So then fast forward to Richard Branson, you didn't just get him 3 tracks. You did I think that you alluded to the fact that that was your first Sonic brand Bible. How did it
yeah.
feel when you like, how did you know when that deliverable was done for you? And then what was it like when you presented it to them?
Well, think of a ship as a layer cake,
Mhm.
right? And each layer has a different floor on it and different set of experiences. I think there were 10 or 12 restaurants on the ship. There were something like 30 different venues of experiences, whether it was like the theater show, the drag queen brunch, the Italian restaurant, the Japanese, the barber shop, right? So it's a village within on the water. So what they asked me to do, because I had at the time I had a creative agency, and it was sensory branding and cultural programming. So how do I manipulate the 5 senses to really engage the guest experience, and how do you create architecture around each of them, right? So if it's scent branding, working with a particular nose to create something that kind of feels like the story that you're telling the guest. Within Virgin, they had no understanding of like how to take the pedigree of Richard Branson or the Virgin brand and distill it down to a new experience, right? They were looking to break the cruising industry and
Mm.
reinvent it, right? Because it's more cattle call. You get on a massive 8,000 person ship and you just get eat and sit there, right? And this is a very high touch, high experience cruising experience, right? Geared to a younger audience that have never cruised before. So we went across every single floor, um, 7 days on the ship, the emotional arc that we wanted to take the journey, the guest on, from intimidation when you first get on the boat to the second day or third day to opening up to the fifth day of like acceleration and then the seventh day reflection. So I had to create this master Bible of how do you take the guest on this crazy journey? What is every single outlet's point of view on a music experience? And then how does the layered cake all come into play so that when you cut a giant slice straight down the middle and eat it, you're like, wow, that was my brand. And we worked on that for, I don't know, about 2 years,
Oh, wow.
you know, it was because we were building the shit from scratch. And, you know, I had to take that deck and pitch it to Bain Capital so that, you know, the Virgin team didn't seem insane on investing a lot of money into building this strategy. But it has paid off exponentially because, you know, they built, I think, 4 or 5 ships and they have this Sonic brand Bible that they can then program against.
So I know you've mentioned a couple of these events, whether it be Tom Ford, the deliverable to Branson, working continuously with the likes of the Starwood team and through One Hotel and Treehouse and all those awesome kind of super innovative hospitality brands. But if you were to look back, what are some other projects that you've worked on or tracks that you've laid that really gave you the chills? Like, when do you know? Is there a point where you get the chills or goosebumps or you're like, fuck, that was awesome? And you just know that you've hit it? Because one of the things I found in just photography or art or writing is I have to iterate. And then I just know when it's right. So
Yeah.
what's a project that when you think back, it still gives you chills? And how do
Yeah.
you take that moment and apply it when you onboard a new client to
Yeah.
get to that point of chills?
I would say W Hotel, you know, when I got hired to be global entertainment director, you know, the hotel industry was just heads in beds, right? That's what people did. They went there, they slept, they got up, and they did their thing. And the reason why they were in town. W Hotel was a category buster. They reinvented hospitality by, you know, offering food and beverage and cultural touch points for the guests to stay in the hotel and never leave. So when I came on right during financial crisis, I think it was more of a fluff piece. The people that on the team that hired me knew me from the fashion days. So they were like, oh, like this guy could do something. But then I started but I had a point of view. That was the thing. I had scored a bunch of films. I scored probably like 300 TV commercials at the time. I was a record producer and I was like kind of the it guy producing fashion shows in Milan, Paris, London, New York, Berlin. And now you're going to give me hotels? Are you fucking kidding me? Like I had so much like, but also, you know, I was out till 5 in the morning every night and I thought I was the shit, you know, as far as like in it, you know?
Yeah.
So building that identity really changed the industry from what people tell me. You know what I mean? Like we created a soundtrack that defines such a moment in time within hotel space. To this day, I still get emails from people and they're just like, that WCD you made was just like, just forever frozen in time of like my life and those moments. And it was just like such an incredible experience. And then I got to scale that IP that I was creating globally. And I think I opened up 25 hotels all throughout Asia and Europe. And every time I went to another destination, they would send me first with the cultural Bible and the Sonic Bible that I was playing with. I would identify all the cool kids in a city who resonated in the same Sonic space that I did. I would indoctrinate them into the W Hotel philosophy, and then I would pull them into the hotel as the local music ambassadors. So all of a sudden, every time I opened a hotel, I had the coolest motherfuckers in every city being the people that were like running zeitgeist in every city. And that's how W during that period of time was just like home run after home run after home run that we built. And
How do you find those tastemakers in each town?
The world back then was quite small, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I knew so many people, so many people. So I would just call up, I don't know, like,
Like St. Petersburg or
yeah,
Moscow. Which one did you do? You did Moscow or St.
yeah,
Petersburg? I
St.
forget.
Petersburg. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you find that tastemaker there?
You start hitting your friends. You call Dimitri from Paris that has been spinning there, and you're like, "Hey, dude, who's the cool kids in town?" Or you call Thievery Corporation, or Paul Oakenfold. Like all my friends at the time were these killers, and be like, "Who am I talking to?" And then I land in a city, and I already have 5, 6 people that are like the shit in there. And then I'm saying, I'm opening a hotel. Let's talk. Let's figure this out. And then all of a sudden, start tweaking the formula. How are we going to take the brand values and the cool underground stuff in a city and then pop it right into the W and then boom. And I would do that, 6 months prior to opening. So there would be so much hype from the influential people in a city. So by the time we opened up, you know what I mean? They were kings and queens and they had their own home. And then I would stay in contact with them all the time.
I think that's also something that we could all learn. I mean, we all should be doing as leaders also is to find our replacements in effect, right? It's
Yeah.
like how, and maybe that actually goes full circle
Yeah.
back to the mentor thing. When you found that tastemaker in
Yeah.
St. Petersburg, you probably didn't rip him down as much as Mr. Purdy ripped you down, right?
No, 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 no. I'm what do you call it? First and foremost, my code is to pass it on, right?
Mm,
It's so important to pass it on. So my days at the W, I really put on a lot of people. They knew I was the big boss, like for the brand,
mhm.
but if they were good people and they had good hearts and they were talented, I would invest a lot into them. And then I had no ego about it. I would be like, okay, now you run Asia or you run France or something. So, and they always, I was a little older when everything hit. I think I was 36, 37 by the time W had hired me. So, as I started getting closer to 40, I mentored a lot of people. And right now, specifically, like I see myself as only a mentor to a lot of the young kids that are, you know, I'm empowering to run different hotels. I'm not the cool guy anymore. I've come to terms with that, but
My
I
kids
am.
think you're pretty cool.
That's because I didn't jump in the water. They were
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Who's this guy?" And he thinks he's too cool.
Yeah.
But in honesty, I think like the biggest joy that I have right now is mentoring and trying to elevate as many young musicians. And part of that is me understanding how difficult it is to be creative in this space,
Mm,
period. End stop. You work for a private equity company, they don't give a fuck about creativity. It's a mark on the spreadsheet and they expect 100% ROI on that, right? Culture and cool does not have a line item on the spreadsheet, but yet they demand a 20% return. So it is hard to get a young creative into that space because, it's sometimes a thankless environment with the expectations of business, and IRR and all these other things. So like often, you know, they need to be heard. They need to be told they're great at what they do and that I love them and I trust them and I see them and I see their talent. But at the same time, they also need to be told that this is an opportunity for you to pay your mortgage and have a career. So there are times where you just need to shut up, swallow your pride and listen. And if you have a problem, you call me up and then I'll back you or I will fill you in on what really happened, not
mm.
the egoic engagement that you thought was. And I wish I had people like that while I was ascending. Maybe I would have autocorrected a couple moments of my ego at different moments in time. But at the end of the day, I love humans and I want to see them succeed. And I also want people who believe that putting in the time should be rewarded.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't put in the time. They just expect it.
It is amazing how, the private equity, the owners, the allocators of capital are expecting a 20% return. And in what I do, furnishing hotels, FF&E, which is furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, is always the last line item on a budget. But the architects and the designers and all the manufacturers that touch that last line item, sound branding is probably even below the line on that one, right? Because that's operating. But and to me, those things are asymmetrically more important than so much of the brick and mortar and just what is getting built up out of the ground, because that's the thing that people remember. That's the people that's where the clients have their impressions and their memories, and that's what draws them back. And it's almost like I feel like that stuff should almost go to the top, but
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
That's where magic happens,
Yeah.
you know? And, if sound infrastructure is shit, no matter what music you're pumping through, the experience falls flat. And then you've designed this space and you've spent so much money on it and the experience just falls flat. Or you can design a space that's just passable, but the sound experience is like effortless, like a Ferrari humming, and people were just like, "Whoa, this feels so good." I struggle with that with different clients, and it's the investment in infrastructure, that is so important, especially nowadays. I mean, this is one of the trends for younger generations that are inheriting all the money. They know good sound, period.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have great speakers, they have great headphones, they have great clubs that they go to. They travel the world and all these different kind of cool beach clubs and late night clubs. They all put in great sound. So if they go into a hotel experience or a hotel lobby or bar experience and it sounds like shit, they know, you know, and they won't have that extra drink.
I love how you keep bringing up this, the 1.7 trillion, because as much as there's this fear of unknown about like what AI and I don't like what the computers and the robots can bring. There's this on the other side of that coin, which I don't think a lot of people, I don't know why more people don't talk about this, because I think it's very optimistic. I think the AI thing could be optimistic too, depending on how you look at it. But the 1.7 trillion that Michelangelo is referring to is there's this huge, I think it's the largest, it is, I don't think, I know, the largest transfer of wealth in the history of humanity is going to happen when the baby boomers start passing on and leaving their
Yeah.
assets to their kids. And like, what does that mean for what is next? I have no idea, but that's a lot of dry powder that's coming to everyone. And and it's interesting as people change and needs and desires and wants change or perceive to change, because maybe they don't really, that's going to really, I think, be a laboratory or fuel for some really incredible breakthroughs. And with that, I'm going to ask you, like, if you were to design the soundtrack for the next decade of hospitality, what do you think it would sound like?
Oh God. I mean, I think in context of 24 hours and several days, 72 hours, right? 24 hours on and a 72-hour experience. So, it crosses every single genre and every single emotional arc that I want you to have. So, bossa nova or some very soft down tempo singer songwriter stuff has an absolute place in the morning. When you want to be more reflective about your morning time or the relaxation and indulgence in the trip that you're having. And then, how it's not so much genre as I think is energy and emotional context throughout the day and how effortless it needs to kind of go up every 2 hours is another kind of bump up and another bump up and another bump up. So the soundtrack is effortless. And in my opinion, when I curate music for these experiences, I just go back to what I know, and that is curating music from artists that it's very clear that they've put the time in to be great at it. So the production is high quality. the vocal talents or the performances are very high quality, and they are paying homage to the greats from the past. The moment you start getting into formulaic production is the moment that you are Starbucks of music, or experiences. And there are a lot of brands that serve that up. Whatever's playing on the radio is playing inside theirs. But luxury, like high-end luxury, is touch, bespoke, curated experiences, in my opinion.
How do you, okay, so I get this driving around in my car with my kids, like they'll want to play whatever they want to play. I let them play it. But sometimes when I'm driving around, they're like, what is this music? I just want to be on random from some DJ somewhere. Just take me on like a journey, whatever the journey they're doing. I just
Yeah,
dig because I find I get so used to listening to the same things over and over, and they do too. But like,
sure.
I just like someone like you to serve up new things, new playlists, new themes, a new journey for me while I'm driving.
Right. Because there is a generation gap, it's a discovery engine. So you always want to offer new and next artists that are offering a very rich point of view, but then you need to tie them back to through lines to some of the greats, right? Because the divide is so great in our age groups. When you do drop a Marvin Gaye track or you drop a Sade track, of course we've heard it a million times, but like in context to the cocktail night in the lobby, and all of a sudden Your Love Is King drops on, or, Hold On to Our Love and Sade, like people are like, whoa, it's timeless, right? So how do you merge the timeless mastery and artistic voices with the new generation that also is trying to hit the same nodes? That's how I approach things. That's why I stay in my niche. You know what I mean? I'm not looking to step out of that character that I'm trying to make you feel like you are inside the film, which is the backdrop of the hotel.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like me, unlike you, I have such a limited quiver, and all the arrows in the quiver for music for
Yeah,
me is just so limited. And it's just, I love that you've dedicated your life to the expanse, and also, but you're able to really pull those arrows out of the quiver to like take that whole expanse, but like really narrow it down on a very specific sonic architecture. To me,
mm.
it's phenomenal, and
Well,
I'm jealous.
that's because I studied music since I was 7, and I was, what's the word? I was supposed to be a busboy.
Hmm.
I was supposed to
What were you
evolve
playing?
past
Clarinet or
being
something? What were you?
violin. I
Oh,
went to,
violin. That's right.
yeah,
Okay.
Manhattan School of Music, violin,
Wow.
and as a child, and yeah. And now, I mean, honestly, it's my frontline warriors, right? The young kids that are, once you've identified the sonic strategy, then you fill it with just the young, cool kids that are killing it. Like I was just in one hotel, Miami, and I was on the rooftop of water and just printing money because the experience is so fun and rich, and the DJs are killing it. And I just sat there and I Shazammed like 400 songs. I was like, "Oh, this is a great one. Oh, this is great."
Well, and you also got, I love it also when the Shazam can't pick it up, right? That's when you're
Yeah,
like, ooh, what the hell is
yeah.
this? So kind of a humorous as we round third base. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions are coming up. Is
Mhm.
Mariah Carey making it in?
I mean, she should.
She
I
really
mean,
should.
let's remove her insanity aside. Like she's
Yeah.
very insane in how she acts and the diva-esque, but as far as a legacy goes, um, I would say my favorite part of Christmas is
Her song.
singing that song for like a month straight until nauseum. That one and Donny Hathaway.
Yeah.
This Christmas.
It happens earlier and earlier and earlier.
Oh yeah, I mean, like they're playing it like in Halloween nowadays. It's kind of crazy.
But the other thing that's messed up about Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think, and I don't really want to spend too much time on this, but like I'm just looking at the nominees right now.
Oh,
Okay, I brought up Mariah Carey. Black Crowes, how are they not in? Phil Collins, how is he not in?
I mean,
Wu-Tang, how are they not in?
yeah, no, that's
Oasis,
crazy.
what? Iron Maiden. Did I say that? In excess? What the hell? So it's just a weird, it's a weird thing.
I don't know what the criteria are. I mean, it just sounds asinine, you know, like rock and roll's dead. So why isn't fucking everybody in the Hall of Fame? Because they
I don't
created
know.
it. You
I
know,
don't
there's no
know.
rock and roll. I mean, like, what is rock and roll now?
I don't know. I guess it's just wearing a pair of leather pants and rocking and rolling.
I mean, I'll plug my one of my dearest friend named Andy. His son is somber, and I watched him grow up and produce music, and now he's like one of the biggest artists of 2025. Massive.
Oh, wow.
Like within 9 months, he just blew up on the cover of like Rolling Stone and Vogue, and I mean, he's the man. It's amazing to watch such a young, talented person kill it out there. Hopefully, I'll get tickets to his show for free.
That's awesome. Well, look, Michelangelo, I've enjoyed all of our time together in person, remotely, and even here. If people wanted to learn more about your sonic architecture, and
Sure.
what's a good way for them to get in touch and connect besides Shazam?
Yeah. My website, lacqua.net, and LinkedIn always.
Great. And if you're in Todos Santos,
Yeah.
give him a shout.
Look me up.
He knows all the spots. Michelangelo,
Yeah.
I've loved this so much, and I just want to say thank you. I've been wanting to do this for years, so thank you.
What an honor. And I appreciate you inviting me on.
And also thank you to all of our listeners. Without you and your continued tuning in, we wouldn't be speaking to such amazing people like Michelangelo and tastemakers and how tastemakers find tastemakers. If you think that this can influence how someone thinks about hospitality or sonic architecture, please pass it along. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.